This is a creek that people either walk over or nearby here every single day. People in this neighborhood say they'll be hugging their loved ones a little tighter tonight after that shootout left a man shot in plain sight near a busy intersection. Lewis says there actually used to be an on-ramp to the I-4 right here off of 40th Street, and she says after it was closed, there was an immediate and negative impact on minority businesses in this area. It also came with updates to the intersection where that accident happened. That includes updated lighting and this crosswalk you see right here. They're essentially removing just a few handfuls worth of rubble at a time. It's a painstaking process, but they say they have to move this slow to prevent another collapse. Cables and an open ceiling is how a Tampa family has been living since Hurricane Ian. They reached out to ABC Action News to get some answers because they say their power has not been restored since that storm hit. And we reached out to FEMA and TECO to get answers. Under the glow of their Christmas tree and to the soundtrack of a generator is how the Paul family has lived in hurricane recovery limbo since Ian hit.
This is one of the hardest challenges I have ever faced in my entire life.
Melissa Paul tells ABC Action News they're living like this after a power surge during the storm fried their home's wiring. A report from Tampa Fire Rescue confirms the surge on September 28th and says it impacted multiple homes. Paul says crews had to cut into her ceiling to put out smoldering wires.
People don't prepare for this. Like when the hurricane's coming through, you think go to the store, get water, get toilet paper, get whatever you have to get. But you don't think you're going to have to live like this for months.
Tampa Fire Rescue listed the cause of the surge as an act of nature. But despite an inspection, documents show FEMA has denied Paul's claims to help pay for repairs because they say the damage was not caused by the disaster. But they did offer her $300 for miscellaneous expenses. Paul has been quoted anywhere from $12,000 to upwards of $20,000 to get this work done. And she says she's been writing and reaching out to FEMA to appeal their decision.
Every single day I call FEMA for an update.
ABC Action News also reached out, and earlier today, FEMA initially told us they wouldn't be able to get us an answer on Paul's case in time for our story. But then, during our interview, FEMA sent a response saying that while they couldn't discuss specifics about Paul's case, they would contact her to set up a new inspection if it was warranted. It's a response that doesn't give Paul much hope.
I've asked for a re-inspection after the first inspection.
And it leaves her and her family still waiting in limbo. In Tampa, Rochelle Alleyne, ABC Action News. Under the now familiar hum of a generator, we find a sight for sore eyes in the Paul family home.
We've been praying for this day, and I just hope that everything goes good and we keep moving forward.
Workers are replacing fuse boxes and installing new wiring that will give them power back more than 4 months after Hurricane Ian damaged their Tampa home.
Every single day I call FEMA for an update.
We first introduced you to the Paul family in January after they told us they'd struggled to get FEMA to acknowledge that their damage was storm-related. And after reviewing a fire report from that day, which listed the damage as an act of nature, we contacted FEMA too.
I believe it was the next day FEMA reached out and they set up a in-person inspection.
2 weeks after FEMA re-inspected their home, they sent the Paul family a letter approving them for disaster relief funds. The $2,600 that they allocated for repairs wasn't enough to fully cover everything. But Melissa Paul says the repair company they're using is willing to work with them. And as she counts down the days until Thursday, when they should finally have power back,
I'm probably going to cry. I probably am going to cry.
She says she's just remaining thankful.
Here we are. Yay. 1 month later. Thank you so much for coming out here and helping us with our story.
In Tampa, Rochelle Alleyne, ABC Action News. Lynn Hunt says over the years she's needed to get her blood drawn a lot.
Because I have a problem with my lungs. I also am a type 1 diabetic. I also have fibromyalgia.
But for Hunt, traditional methods don't work.
It feels like fire. It always burns. The veins collapse, and then even the saline burns.
And after years of painful experiences, about 5 years ago, she had a medical port implanted.
It's right here. It's right there.
To help make things easier. Medical documents show that since then, she's been having a home health nurse come out to help manage the many medications she takes and flush out her port. And most recently, that care has come from Advent Health Home Care, West Florida.
It has to be by a skilled nurse, which my doctor wrote that on many letters. Someone who's not skilled cannot do a port. And if you don't flush it every month, it can get clogged or it can get an infection, which could potentially kill me.
But late last year, Hunt says her monthly services were canceled and she wasn't sure why.
I'm really not very happy about it because how would they like to be in my shoes?
She's appealed that decision twice, but her services weren't restored. And in January, she contacted ABC Action News. Since then, I've combed through years worth of medical documents for Ms. Hunt. I've also spoken to her insurance provider and to Advent Health to better understand what happened. Client notes from Hunt's last appointment in November show that her former nurse put in a call to Humana to request that a case manager look into why she was being discharged from the program. A note from 1 month later on December 3rd shows that a rep from Advent Health called Humana again to explain that Hunt had ongoing needs for her port and that they were no longer covered by Humana. Another note dated 2 days later shows that Hunt's nurse encouraged her to appeal that decision. Well, she did, and in December, Humana issued this explanation of non-coverage. It says that skilled nursing services would only be covered if they were needed to maintain a patient's current condition or keep them from getting worse. It also says that Hunt has a long-standing condition that no longer requires monitoring, and it goes on to say that her port hasn't been used in years and no longer needed to be flushed out. But Hunt says her port has been used and often.
All it ever did was got flushed from the nurse. And he drew my blood.
More recently, in February, Hunt's doctors issued 2 notes calling for her to have her blood drawn and for her port to be flushed monthly. And both listed home health care as the means to get this done. In March, Hunt's doctor also issued another note saying home health care would be required indefinitely. But so far, Hunt's services still haven't been reinstated.
Well, I'll just tell you like this. I just feel like nobody really cares what happens to people anymore.
Earlier this week, I contacted Advent Health for more information, and in a statement, they told me they didn't have the authority to reinstate services. They also told me that Ms. Hunt would have to work with her doctor and Humana to requalify for the services. So on Wednesday, I contacted Humana because Ms. Hunt does have a doctor's note, and she also won a second appeal of her case earlier this month. And in a statement, they told me they work diligently to resolve issues for their members, and they added that they are committed to providing their members with access to high-quality health care, including in their homes. Ms. Hunt says she's also gotten a call from Humana with a promise that they would look into the issue, but she still doesn't know where this leaves her. On a Friday afternoon,
Oh, victory is mine. Victory is mine. Victory today.
Lynn Hunt has a song in her heart.
Oh, I told Satan.
And after the last 7 months, her joy is understandable. We first introduced her a few weeks ago.
I'm really not very happy about it because how would they like to be in my shoes?
When she was still struggling to get someone to flush out the medical port she has in her chest.
It has to be by a skilled nurse, which my doctor wrote that on many letters. Someone who's not skilled cannot do a port. And if you don't flush it every month, it can get clogged or it can get an infection, which could potentially kill me.
She'd been getting that service from an Advent Health home care nurse for the last 5 years, but then late last year, her services were canceled. We did some digging through her medical records and found that an apparent miscommunication between her provider and her health insurance led to that cancellation. And since our first story aired, Hunt says she's heard from a Humana case manager.
She kept calling me back. Finally, she called me back and said, "We got somebody who will do your support.
And she had her first appointment with that new home health care provider today.
The nurse came out and she did the assessment, all that stuff. And so officially today I'm in.
It's a victory that Hunt says wouldn't have come without speaking up.
No matter what your status in life, you got to be your own advocate. Don't let people tell you no. And don't be afraid to speak out.
Then I started shouting victory.
I'm in-depth reporter Rochelle Alleyne. A Pinellas County foster family is still under fire after dozens of former foster kids accused them of abuse while in their care. Earlier this year, we reported that authorities in Pinellas County declined to charge Jacqueline and Gerald Logeman, but we're learning that charges could be filed against that couple somewhere else.
I think justice is like life in prison. They need to lose everything.
This call is being echoed dozens of times.
This has bothered me since 2006, since I was 12 years old.
By men who say they were abused by their former foster parents, Jacqueline and Gerald Logeman. The Clearwater couple has been under scrutiny since January after 9 foster kids were removed from their home. According to police records, that removal launched a criminal investigation into current living conditions at the couple's home and into allegations from former foster kids. But ultimately, it was closed, at least in Pinellas County. That's because, according to the Citrus County Sheriff's Office, that case is now being turned over to them.
It's my understanding that right now the Citrus County Sheriff's Office is conducting their own investigation.
Adam Hecht is the attorney representing more than 20 former foster kids. He's filed a nearly 700-page civil lawsuit against the Logemans and several child welfare agencies. The complaint alleges that much of the abuse, including sexual abuse, happened at a Homosassa property that the couple owned. It was nicknamed the River House.
Honestly, it happened in Pinellas County, it happened in Citrus County, but majority of it was in Citrus County. And that river home honestly haunts me. His favorite video haunts me. Hearing that Citrus County is taking over is actually a breath of fresh air, because that's where everything happens at. So you think you're going to a place to have more fun when it's more like it's a spot to be sexually abused.
But as one side hopes for charges,
it's important for us to see if the allegation has legs, what we call, does the case have legs?
The Logeman's attorney, Rick Escobar, says he's confident they won't come.
I'm not worried about the criminal charges. I don't believe that these criminal charges are going to be filed. And if they are, I think we're going to be highly successful in court.
Escobar says his office conducted its own investigation and hasn't found any proof of the claims made against the Logemans. And instead, he claims the men suing them are simply looking for money.
So the motive, I think, for those allegations is not that these things happened. I think that the motive for these allegations are that you have some individuals getting together on social media, grouping together in order to make these allegations for profit.
But the men we spoke to say that couldn't be further from the truth.
I'm hoping that both of them spend the rest of their time in prison, tell you the truth. The money doesn't mean anything to me.
We still don't know when Citrus County authorities will make their final decision about filing charges, but in the meantime, we have also emailed DCF, who is named in that civil suit, to get more information on their own investigation into the Logemans and to get their reaction to the possibility of criminal charges being filed. A spokesperson for DCF says they're working to get us a formal response. In the studio, Rochelle Alleyne, ABC Action News.